Hi, kids. We're starting theme 12 today, which is another theme about space. So, today we're going to find out what it's like to actually go up in space and see the Earth from space. And what does all of that feel like? So, get your literacy source books and let's get started. So, here we are. Before we get started, this is some questions that we'd like you to think about. What do you think the Earth looks like from space? Why do astronauts have to wear those special suits? What happens if they don't have those suits on and they're in space? And what would it actually feel like to be in space? We're going to the next page here. This is on page 396. So take a moment, get out your source book, and open to page 396 to these pictures here. This is a, oops, sorry, geez. This is a picture of things that are happening in the story. This student here is imagining and drawing what she thinks it's like to be up in space. And here are some of the most important parts of what she's thinking about. And as I go and read this story, you can look at these pictures and follow along to the parts that are happening in the story. And what are some words that the author uses as she's writing to make you smile or make you laugh? Why did the author choose those words? Okay. So here we are. It's called Floating Home. All right. When Mrs. Selinsky asked the class to look at their homes in a new way and to draw what they saw, Maxine left school and just kept on walking. She passed Kevin outside, sitting on the branch of a tree, studying his home like he was a squirrel. She passed Selena lying in the grass in her front yard, looking up at her apartment building as if she was an ant. She passed Oscar in dark sunglasses, standing in front of his home, pretending he was a stranger. Artist pad under her arm, her unsharpened colored pencils in their box, and a globe sharpener with all the countries of the world in her overalls pocket, Maxine passed her own home and kept on walking. So all of these students have to draw something in a new way, draw something that's as if they had never seen it before. And she said to draw their home. So Kevin is drawing his house, and Oscar is standing in front of his home, and Selena is looking at her apartment building. Well, Maxine was going to draw the most unusual picture of all. She was going to picture her home from space. She was going to be the youngest astronaut of all time. She checked into her room and immediately sat down. Suddenly, newspaper and television reporters burst into the room. Maxine, are you afraid? Maxine, how does it feel to be the first 8-year-old astronaut? Maxine, are you going to miss your parents? Maxine, why are you doing it? Art, Maxine told them. I'm doing it for art. Time to get dressed, said a NASA official. It was the biggest diaper she had ever seen. You gotta wear it, a woman from NASA told her. You could be sitting in your seat waiting to launch for hours. You can't raise your hand and ask to go to the bathroom. Then a few minutes after you launch, the shuttle's zipping ahead and you're gonna be pushed back into your seat and you're not gonna be able to move. And it's gonna feel like something very heavy is sitting on your bladder. And then, got the point, Maxine said. She put on long thermal underwear in case she got too cold. On top of her thermal underwear, she put on her cooling underwear in case she got too hot. The cooling suit had little tubes of water sewn in the bottom and the top. It looked like a Spider-Man costume. Don't tell my classmates about the diaper, she said. No problem, the woman said. She braided her hair so it would fit into the helmet. More reporters were waiting for her in her suit room. They were there to watch her get dressed. She was glad this didn't happen at home every morning. The pressure suit was meant to protect her should anything happen to the shuttle before it rose 19 miles above the ground. The suit was big and orange, and she didn't put it on as much as climb into it. Through a slit in the back, Maxine shoved one leg, then the other, then her arms. She poked her head through the tight neckband at the top of the suit. The boots locked into the pants cuffs. The gloves locked onto the sleeves, and the helmet locked onto the collar. The people from NASA put all sorts of things in her pockets. Special gloves to keep her warm if she needed to parachute out of the shuttle and land in the ocean, an emergency radio, survival gear, sharpener and colored pencils. They also gave her a small mirror. Place it on your lap. You'll be able to see out the window above your head. It was time to go out to the pad. Feeling like a 100-pound duck in a diaper, Maxine waddled over to the van that would take her to the launch pad. It was 3 a.m. and dark outside. Maxine had never been outside at 3 a.m. before. So this is what the world looks like when I'm sleeping, she said to herself. And then she saw the shuttle. It was alive. Suspended above the pad, the vehicle was lit by dazzlingly bright xenon lights, as if it were an actor stage center, ready for his big speech. And it was breathing, exhaling steam from the top and the bottom. It reminded Maxine of a dragon. The orbiter itself looked like a stubby airplane. It rode piggyback on a huge orange fuel tank as tall as a 15-story building. Filled with liquid hydrogen and oxygen, the orange tank would supply the fuel for the oxygen for the shuttle's main engines. Maxine entered the shuttle's orbiter through a porthole. Since the shuttle was pointed straight up, ready for launch, the back wall was actually her floor. To protect the panels and instruments from the astronauts' heavy feet, the wall was covered with a thick pad. Some art project, a technician said, and helped strap Maxine into her seat. I hope your mom put your drawing on the refrigerator, another technician said, and checked her suit. He made sure it was working. And as the door closed, Maxine checked to make sure her pad, her pencils, and her sharpener were still there. The countdown began. With 2 minutes to go, the controllers at Cape Canaveral announced over the radio, "Close and lock your visors, turn on your suit oxygen, and have a nice flight." Maxine put the mirror on her lap. She could see through the window above her head, but didn't see anything except for clouds and clear blue sky. She did as she was told. She lowered her visor and began to breathe oxygen from her suit. The main engine started. Everything began to tremble. It was a familiar feeling, like being in a subway train. The vibrations rubbed her mirror. Then the whole shuttle began to sway. Suddenly, the rumbling became thunderous. The gentle subway became an earthquake. Everything shuddered and shook. The noise, like 1,000 lions roaring, like the heart of an immense raging fire. Roar! Boom! She was pressed deep back into her seat. Then something kicked her in the back and up. We are going, she told herself. We're definitely going somewhere. Up, up, launch. Looking into her mirror, she could see the launch pad dropping away at a dizzying speed. Rapidly, everything on the ground became smaller and smaller. Up, up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, flying faster and faster. 8, the shuttle began to roll over and over. Maxine watched the sunlight fly across the cabin. She was flying upside down. Invisible hands pushed her deep into her seat. The shuttle hurled through the thick atmosphere and wind howled. In 20 seconds, she was traveling faster than the speed of sound, faster than the word hello travels from one person's mouth to another person's ear. More than 700 miles an hour. 1 mile every 5 seconds. Faster, then faster, the shuttle tore through the thick atmosphere. At 2 minutes, the fuel completely used up. The solid rocket boosters were no longer necessary. Bang! The separation motors jettisoned the solid rocket boosters away from the shuttle. It felt like a giant had whacked the shuttle with a big stick. The cabin lit up. For a frightening second, everything was fire and smoke outside the windows. Then clear, and then quiet. Maxine imagined the empty rocket canisters under the parachutes drifting back down to Earth. They would be picked up in the ocean. Now, the ride was glass smooth and impossibly fast. With 8 minutes of launch, Maxine was traveling 11,000 miles an hour, or almost 190 miles every minute. 3 miles a second. The acceleration continued to press her deep into her seat, made her face feel as heavy weight were pushing against it, made her chest feel like a gorilla was sitting on her ribs. It was hard to breathe. She took quick, shallow breaths. She couldn't move. She couldn't lift her arms. Then the 3 main engines cut off, and suddenly everything was weird. In less than a heartbeat, Maxine from feeling as if she weighed 200 pounds to feeling as if she weighed nothing at all. She was in space. Her eyes seemed to float in her head. Her stomach was floating in her belly. She floated within her suit. She felt giddy and a little sick. We made it, someone laughed. All around the cabin, things were floating. Checklists attached to panels by strings drifted like sea plants. Her mirror gently tumbled over and over through the cabin. Maxine, someone called her, look up. There, up in the window, was the Earth. It was dazzling, sitting like a royal blue gem on black velvet. At its curved edge on the horizon was a thin, bright, fluorescent blue band, the atmosphere. She was looking down at the air that she breathed. Somewhere down there, her house sat at the bottom of the atmosphere. Her parents were breathing its air. Suddenly, something drew a long, thin streak beneath her. A shooting star. A chunk of rock from space had sliced through the atmosphere and burned up. She was looking down at shooting stars. The shuttle passed over a funnel of clouds, a hurricane. Where the sky was clear, she could see shades of brown, gray, and green, and all that blue. But where was her house? Where was her town? Her city? Where was her state? She removed her globe sharpener with all the countries. She looked out the window. Somebody had forgotten to draw all the lines. Where were the lines that divided up the continents into countries? Where were the lines that divided up the countries into states and then into cities? There were no lines. It was just one big Earth, her home. Wasn't that a fun, exciting story? So we here have a lot of pictures here. I think we remember all of these pictures when she got into space, when the rocket was about to jump up, and here it is flying, and there she is looking out the window and drawing the picture of the Earth. All right, so there's a lot going on in this story. One of the things I wanted to point out to you, though, was classifying and categorizing, classifying and categorizing. This is just another fancy way of saying we're going to sort things into groups. So there are two parts that we should be paying attention to. What are the feelings she had on Earth as she was moving, and what are the feelings that she had once she was in space? And we could divide them into two different groups based on how she was feeling. For instance, she weighed 200 pounds. She couldn't move. It was like there was a gorilla sitting on her chest. Do you remember these descriptions? And they were saying that it was going to be so heavy, she might not be able to go to the bathroom. And it was like somebody was pressing her back into her seat. All of that is when Maxine is inside the Earth's atmosphere, moving really fast. And then she weighed as if she was nothing at all. Her stomach was floating inside her belly. She was floating inside her suit. Her eyes were floating inside of her head. All of that is what it felt like when Maxine was in space. So there's two different ways that you could categorize things. And we're going to be doing more of this later on, okay? Your practice today is floating home. Here are the words that you're going to be putting in these boxes. You can try yourself, see which ones fit where. The words are astronaut, Earth, space, shuttle, and space suit. All right. And we'll do some more classifying and some vocabulary when we get back. Okay. Bye, everybody.